a gavel. I have a little hammer though, so please behave yourselves. Okay, Lynn Ide is ill tonight, unfortunately, so I will be doing the chair job. I would ask you, because it's quite a crowded meeting, to please stay on mute unless you're on the board or making public comment when we get to that part. We're also going to hope to change the order a little bit. After the Pledge of Allegiance, public comment and approval of the minutes, I will ask for a motion to move the action items forward about the mask mandate in schools and the approval of the Wyndham High School Tech package. But we will do that in due time. So that's just a preview. And I thank you all for your patience in this crowded meeting. I believe the superintendent will share the screen.
Are we gonna open with, oh, there it is.
Right, we can start the pledge.
I pledge
I pledge allegiance to the flag
flag
of the United
United
States
States of America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and justice for all.
for all.
Okay, for public comment, we typically have the members of the public sign up in the chat, which will be monitored by Holly Patavina, our administrative wizard. So please do put your name in the chat if you wish to make a public comment. Speak now or forever hold your peace, as they say. Anyone for public chat? I'm using all my cliches, going once, going twice. Well, perhaps you're saving it for after our action items. Thank you, and keep in mind that you can put your name in. I don't know who Tracy's phone is, if somebody's trying to. No. Well, onward to approval of the minutes for February 9th, 2022. We received those in our packet.
So
Do I have a
moved,
motion?
Ilda?
Oh, thank you, Ilda. Motion to approve, second by Paula.
Should Michelle, doing what Michelle does, sent me a request for more
Scott,
information.
I think
You still there?
your speaker's on.
Beeping. I might have lost you.
Scott, we can hear you talking. Mr. Pellman? Holly, is it possible to, oh, he just muted or somebody muted him. Thank you.
So is there any discussion about the minutes? Okay, we'll do a roll call with, if Holly would begin that.
Dr. Galucci,
Aye.
Ms. Ray,
Aye.
Dr. Kaban Owen,
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill,
Abstain.
Mr. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Haney,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera,
Aye.
and Mr. Barr.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will have to postpone the report of the board chair, which was scheduled due to the illness. And I would ask for a motion to move our two action items, vote on the mask mandates in schools and approval of the Wyndham High School technology package. I believe one motion would cover moving those both up.
I move that we move both action items to the beginning of the meeting.
Second.
Okay, first from Katina, second from Brendan. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mary, are we're moving them ahead of the discussion of those items?
Are we moving the discussion and the,
Right, we want
Yeah.
to talk about them first and then vote on
Right.
them before we dig
But
into it.
you just asked to move them, you just asked to move the action items, not the discussion items.
okay,
So,
so,
I amend friendly the motion to move both the discussion and the action items to the beginning of the agenda.
It doesn't matter for the watch.
And I
could
accept her friendly
Galaxy-
amendment.
Thank you, Brendan. Could somebody mute themselves, Galaxy S10E?
Can Holly mute these people? I mean, mute everybody who's not talking?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Is there any discussion about moving those two things, our discussion and then our vote?
Yeah, I have a question.
Thank you. Mhm. Cody, go ahead.
I imagine we're doing this just because we think this will take a lot of time. Is that why we're doing it?
No, I
Why are we
believe
doing that?
that there's a member from the health agency who would be able to ask questions or answer questions if we had specific questions about public health policy. And also for the high school tech package, it's also because we have, experts who might not want to be here through the budget presentations. Is that correct?
I have Patrice Sulik, who's the local health district director. She is on the call. So yes, if we could at least have the discussion, while she's able to answer any questions that might come up.
So, okay, then, just to follow up, Miss.
Well,
Dr.
Cody, just
Yeah.
before, okay, I guess you could follow up. Typically,
Okay.
If anyone else had a comment, they would be able to make it
That's
before you
fine,
could.
if
have
you
a
wanna,
second.
that's fine, if you wanna do that.
Okay, I guess there aren't any other board members. So following up,
It just seems, this just seems strange, like we didn't get any emails informing us that there would be a change in the agenda or that this person would be attending. Is there a reason we weren't notified in advance?
we
Since everybody
always
else
have the,
knew this
we
was
always have the
happening.
ability to move agenda, the order of the agenda. If you seem to think that there's some, there's no other reason to do this except to not keep people who won't really be, who need to know about the budget workshop and the mid-year review of the superintendent.
Cody, if I may,
Yeah.
Chairperson, yeah, it's proper and has happened before that we move items of the agenda and discussions ahead because some unexpected situation like the guests that are here that I didn't know were coming, but I'm happy that they are here. So it's not, it can happen.
Yeah, no,
Just
I get that. I just
clarification.
want, I'm just curious why it is that both Mary and Dr. Youngberg seem to know why we were doing that before the rest of the board did.
I
didn't-
just heard tonight that there was going to be someone from the public health, and I'm a little concerned that there's a nefarious spin being put on this. It's truly a normal thing to move agenda items up if you have experts from outside.
My issue isn't over moving the agenda items. It's that you seem to be, you know why the request to move the agenda took place, and none of, at least I didn't get an email about this. Did any other members of the board get an email about this?
No, I did
No.
not.
Other members did.
I did
No.
not send out an email, but I did have a conversation with Mary about 5 minutes before the board meeting started, because about 10 minutes before it started, we were told Lynn couldn't make it. So we had an email conversation about how we might monitor the meeting in Lynn's absence, so.
Okay,
In
Thank you.
fact, for people who've been to, years of Board of Ed meetings, often when there is an item down at the end of, where actions are, that has to do with a presentation about something like purchase or a tech package, that will often be moved because of expert, but it's just the way the agenda is put together. ahead of time.
Yeah.
So are we ready to vote about moving the items?
Yes.
Okay, Holly, will you take a roll call?
Dr. Galucci,
Aye.
Ms. Ray,
Aye.
Dr. Caban Owen,
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill,
Aye.
Mr. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Haney,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera,
Aye.
and Mr. Bard.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I believe we will go to the discussion on mask mandates in schools.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, so I have some slides to go through, and I know I saw Patrice on the call. She can answer questions if I can't. But let me share my screen here.
Sorry.
All right, so most of you know from having watched the news that the governor has lifted the statewide mask mandate as of February 28th, and he's moving the decisions about masks being utilized in schools to the local level. The commissioners of public health, education, and the Office of Early Childhood still reserve the right to reinstitute a statewide mask mandate through June 30th of 2022, so they still have that right. Superintendents were shared recommendations, which have now become public documents. You can find them on the state website. They're also on our website. As of February 18th, they shared a final document. We had a draft a few days before that, but the final document was released in the afternoon on February 18th. One of the things that I wanted to point out was you're going to see the red map that we've shown many times in these discussions about COVID, and most of the state is in the red. The Commissioner of Public Health did actually let us know that the metrics that is behind that map is actually obsolete in their mind. I don't know why they're still using it. If it's obsolete, it's really kind of doesn't make sense to me. But she basically told the superintendents in a call last week that that particular metric was developed before the Delta and Omicron variants. And obviously everyone knows that those two variants caused a lot more cases than the original virus. And she let the superintendents know that the real way they will know if the state's moving in the wrong direction will be a significant increase in hospitalizations. In the information that they shared with superintendents, that's now a public document, they asked 7 questions. So hopefully you can see them on the screen, but they're basically questions they wanted districts to think about prior to making decisions. Prevalence rates, vaccination rates, what will happen in the event you have an increase in cases. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at the first 3. And the last 4, again, how much time do you need to actually make the adjustment? How can you support students that will continue to wear their masks? All that good stuff around how we're going to keep people safe and comfortable as we think about making the adjustment. Remember, the goal of this is to move from a pandemic response to a management of the virus, the same way we manage the flu, for example. And please, board members, feel free to jump in and ask questions if you have any.
I have one.
Okay, there it is.
Sorry.
Mr. Barr, it's all good.
Yeah, so why now? Like, why did we decide now that this is something we have to live with? Did we not know before?
That's a really good question. The governor decided on February 8th, he had a news conference that said he was going to make February 28th the day that the mask mandate was going to go away. He said as a state, we had a high vaccination rate collectively, and that the numbers were decreasing, and he felt comfortable moving the decisions to the local level. I got to tell you, I have a number of degrees, but none of them are in the medical field or public health. So your guess is as good as mine. I don't know why, other than February 28th, we'll be here in a couple days. And this was the next time our Board of Education met to have this discussion. And we're not alone. There's several school systems that are meeting this week and making the discussion before Monday's decision. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm not really sure.
I think it was, I don't know.
Okay, so I will tell you that there's a number of superintendents across the state that sort of feel like since the governor made the decision in his press conference at the beginning of the month and said that the mask mandate would be over on February 28th, and he made the decision in conjunction with the Commissioner of Public Health, that superintendents feel like they're in a really bad position because we're not public health experts and we didn't make the decision and it's being handed over to us, which is why I think having someone like Patrice Sulik on the call as the local health director makes sense, because I'm definitely not a public health official.
Okay.
I see Paula's hand. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moderating the meeting. Go ahead. Go ahead, Paula.
Okay. Just a couple of questions. There seemed to be 3 items that, again, obviously there are many more, but 3 that came out in your letter and some of the information I read that we needed to focus on in helping to make our decision. And one was the percentage of vaccinations in our community and the immediate surrounding communities. And I don't know if we have that answer.
I have our vaccination data. I do.
Okay.
I don't have the
and-
surrounding communities, but there's a state database, so anybody can look it up. It's available to anyone. But I will
Okay,
share
so
windows.
just thinking in terms of what that percentage is and what the Department of Health recommends as a relatively safe vaccination rate. The other would be what accommodations, if any, our schools would have to make once we remove masks. Is there anything that we would then have to do within our schools, whether it's spacing or school, class moving, luncheons or anything like that, that we would have to anticipate doing once we remove masks? And then I guess the other would be being able to accommodate those students or staff who are medically fragile or have, medical situations that put them at greater risk. So those would be my 3 questions.
Okay, I think we're naturally gonna answer 2 of them in my slides, and then we can get back to the 3rd one. Well, it might be sort of implied, so I'll definitely keep them in mind as I move forward. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're supposed to have another delivery of masks, the KN95 masks and the home test kits. They were scheduled to be picked up on Friday, but now with the potential for bad weather on Friday, they've moved it to early next week. So I'm telling you this because one of the recommendations that DPH sent to the superintendents in their email on Friday was for us to consider having folks test at home prior to the date that masks become optional, or as I prefer to say, recommended but not required, which I think is better than optional. Because I do think, based on our survey data, a number of people are going to continue to use their masks whether or not a mandate is in place. I think the survey data makes that crystal clear. So I've been saying recommended but not required. So I'm letting you know this because we will be receiving new PPE materials early next week. This is the COVID dashboard. It's available on our website. You can see we have very low numbers currently in quarantine or isolation. And again, I always like to shout out to my COVID team. I think there's a couple of the nurses from the COVID team on the call. And I appreciate everything they do every day. You'll notice we're down to only 12 students in quarantine or isolation, 2 positive cases. We have not seen numbers like this in a really long time. We are definitely trending in the right direction. I can't speak to what's going to happen a few weeks from now, but I know right now we're watching our numbers come down steadily, and it's kind of exciting to see that students and staff are not missing school because of COVID. All right, you probably have seen these maps available on the state website. The red map is the one I was referencing earlier that they've told us is the metric that was designed before the variants came into play. But you can tell from that red map, most of the state is in the red zone, right? Meaning that they have more than 15 cases per 100,000 people in the population. So the red map also always lags behind the actual date. So you'll notice on the screen, it says January 30th to February 12th. Obviously it's February 23rd. So the latest data is not posted yet. Wyndham had 35.2 cases per 100,000. It is week by week falling. And I'll just remind everyone that I attend a weekly meeting. There's actually several weekly meetings. One of them is with the local health district. One of them is with the town. We all compare data on a regular basis, and everyone is watching their numbers go down. The blue map up on the screen is a map that covers the number of total cases since they started keeping track. So it has Wyndham's total cases, which looks like 6,412 total cases, or 6,042 actually confirmed. It has, unfortunately, the number of deaths as a result of COVID, the number of people tested, and that was last updated on February 22nd. So I'm just showing you this because all of this information is still available on the state website. And we're also, as a school district, still required to report information to the state so they can continue to keep a close watch on what's happening. That is not changing. That's still going to be in place, even though they're saying the mask mandate is no longer something that's going to take place statewide. And they're also saying that we're not responsible for contact tracing for in-school transmissions. So, but we're still reporting actual cases to the state. Here's the vaccination rates for the town of Wyndham based on the age group. I guess what I wanted to show all of you is obviously our 5 to 11-year-old vaccination data is very low. I know that, and Patrice, feel free to jump in on this. I know our goal is always, I think it's 80% when they talk about that whole herd immunity, 80% is a good number. We're close on a couple of them, but really far away on others. But if you look down at the bottom of the screen, we have offered so many opportunities for the 5 to 11-year-olds to be vaccinated. November, December, January, February, we still have a really low number in town, which leads me to believe that perhaps their parents just don't want to get them vaccinated. We are going to offer another opportunity or two. And the town is actually sponsoring a vaccine clinic on March 4th, which is a day off from school because teachers have professional development. And we want to encourage families, but we can't force people to get vaccinated. It's not a requirement for school. And people get to make a choice about that. So just showing you that our lowest vaccination rate is actually the place where we've offered the most vaccine clinics, school-sponsored vaccine clinics. So I'm not sure what else we can do, but to me, that's a lot of opportunity to get your kids vaccinated if that's what you were choosing to do.
Tracy,
Right.
could I add something?
Go
to
ahead,
that?
Joe.
Oh, is that Patrice?
Sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't want to talk over you, but you invited me.
Absolutely.
So, you know, my staff gave me a little bit of data, and it's actually not surprising that the 5 to 11 is low, because we see that as that's not so low compared to the other towns in our district or even what's going on in the state, because that's still pretty new. I think what becomes a little more obvious about concerns about a lower vaccination rate is the ages 12 to 17. You have 45.45%. In the rest of our district towns, ages 12 to 17 are at a 58% vaccination rate, and the state number is 75.8%. So overall, our district is a little bit on the low side, but when you compare it to the state, you start to see that number, that's kind of like a truer number. The 5 to 11, I think that's still going to take a little time. And, you know, thank you to you and your team for just always working alongside us and doing everything you can to increase. And that includes Eric Hilversum at Wyndham Tech, to just really trying to eke out as many vaccinations as you can in your population. So that provides a little context what it is across the state. And you are correct in that 80% seems to be the magic number, not the number to prevent any illness or any infection transmission, but that kind of, you know, where we start to feel like, you know, maybe we see a herd immunity. So I just wanted to add that in. I'll be quiet now.
Thanks, Patrice. No worries. And we are also offering on the March 4th date that's already scheduled for 5 to 11-year-olds. We are going to offer, I think they just booked it today, a 12 to 17 vaccination clinic to see if we can increase those numbers if there are students and families out there that are looking to be vaccinated. So we're focusing on the data and trying to offer more opportunities for our families.
Tracy,
yeah.
just if you don't mind, if I could ask, I mean, do any of the board members have kids 5 to 11 years of age or younger? I mean, I have 4, so I'm just curious. We seem,
Yes, I do.
why are we so concerned with this? I mean, there's very little risk to kids that age group, so I'm just confused why we're.
I think that's a
posting
great
some
question
of
for
these.
Patrice to answer. Are you still there,
Would you like
Patrice?
me to- Would you like me to answer now?
Yes, please, if you could, that'd be great.
So I think that it's one thing to look at, you know, very little risk in an age group is of course not the same as zero risk. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sure Tracy's nurses know how many vulnerable kids there are, medically fragile, vulnerable, or kids who are contraindicated for vaccine in those age groups in the school setting that are in close contact with each other every day. And so I think to some extent, it's what's your perspective? Is your perspective, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong perspective, there's just different perspectives. So as the health director, I look at what can anybody do to prevent risk or reduce risk to everybody else they're around. And some families may say, you know, they may look at things a different way if they have an elderly or ill person that living in the household. So they're even going to be, you know, concerned about their younger kids. And nobody exists in a vacuum. The death rate, so there's been, my understanding, the latest data I saw was that there's been 7 deaths in Connecticut from COVID-related complications in the last 2 years. And if you look at, you know, whatever the whole population of children in Connecticut is, that's a very low number, as long as it's not your child. And so again, I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong way to look at it. I'm saying there's just a different way to look at it, depending on your perspective. And I look across, you know, I look across the big picture on, you know, what can people do that are going to prevent risk to others, including their own family members. I hope that answered your question.
Yep.
All right. This
Sorry,
is a
Dr.
list.
Youngberg?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dr. Kavan Owen had her hand raised too.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I was going to echo that information that Patrice just provided, that, you know, my grandchildren who are in that age group are vaccinated, and what they are vaccinated for is to protect me and my husband as older adults in the family. So just saying that, and then I'll keep my hand up, Holly, because I have a question for later on.
You're reserving your right to ask that question later? Got it. Okay, so this is, these are the districts that fall within the North Central District Health Department, the one that Patrice is the head of. So you'll notice that all but one of the other districts has chosen February 28th as the day that they will make masks optional or recommended, not required. With just East Windsor waiting till March 15th, but all the others that are in our health district have chosen February 28th, which is, again, I know probably has something to do with the fact that there are a lot of superintendents wondering how we ended up in this position, given the Commissioner of Public Health and the governor's decision. It is a strange place to be placed when none of us are medical or public health professionals. This is a list of the districts that are in our DIRG, our district reference group. So you can see that they have, in most cases, extended their mask mandates. Bridgeport choosing March 31st, Hartford and New Britain at least April 1st. New Haven has said that they will require masks after February 28th, but I cannot find the specific date. New London has not made the decision yet, as far as I can tell. Waterbury joins Hartford and New Britain for April 1st, and obviously Wyndham's having the discussion this evening. Oops. I also want to point out, we've been sort of doing this whole CIAC all along through the COVID, but they recently, Friday afternoon, sent out an update where they are no longer going to be requiring masks for indoor or outdoor practices or competitions for their student athletes. They have said that if your school system continues to require masks, then the athletes obviously have to follow those rules, but the CIAC is not asking, is not extending it beyond February 28th. Do you have your hand raised, Alicia?
Yes.
No, that's good. Here, yeah, take it.
Somebody's-
It's good.
Somebody needs to be muted. Go ahead, Alicia, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my biggest concern is for the kids that have not been vaccinated, if we take the mask off, if we are gonna maybe go with more higher COVID. I don't know, is there any other way that we can solve this problem?
Well, I guess what I keep thinking about, and there's no real way to quantify it, but if the mask mandate disappears, the mandate disappears. But if you are comfortable wearing a mask, that does not disappear. You have the right to continue to wear a mask. And in fact, you'll see in one of my slides, I think it's important that we address that in all of our classrooms, because there will be a number of people whenever the mask mandate disappears. Now, remember, the mask mandate was a temporary response, an emergency response to the pandemic. We never believed we were going to be in masks for the duration. It was supposed to be a temporary response. So at some point it has to disappear. It can't stay forever, right? And we certainly can't manage a virus if we're wearing masks all the time, the way we manage other viruses. So I guess the message is that once the mask mandate disappears, and obviously we're going to be the board's going to be voting on that tonight, no one is going to, everyone who's comfortable wearing a mask can continue to do so. I don't know how to quantify the difference between one person wearing a mask versus being surrounded by many people wearing masks. I've asked if someone has figured out how, someone should do a study to figure that out. I do know that we have the KN95 masks available from the state, which are supposed to be hospital quality and the most protective of all the masks so far, and the ones that they're currently recommending.
Thank you.
So maybe I'll ask my question now, because Windham Public School does not exist in isolation, is part of the town. And the town has a mandate to have masks in all their town buildings. And right, I am assuming that all our buildings are town buildings. So how are we gonna marry those two? And what is the position of the town? Are they going to, are they under any mandate to stop using the mask? So how are we gonna mix of those two?
I've actually had several conversations with the town manager and with the fire marshal, who's the head of the emergency response team, because we meet weekly. And we have had conversations. I told them what I was going to recommend to the board tonight, and that I would keep them posted based on the board's decision. It sounds like they're very willing to move along with the schools in conjunction, so that's not confusing to the town members, but nothing has been set in stone because the board hasn't voted yet. I don't know what to tell them is the next step yet, but we are on the same page, wanting to make this make sense for the community in general. And I was under the impression that a municipal mandate applied to schools, but that does not seem to be the case now, which it sounds like the schools are could potentially make a decision separate from the town if that's what we chose to do. I don't know. I don't know how to answer the question. I'm so sorry. All right.
I just, Tracy, wanted to point out, I think some people may want to ask questions, but we only have board discussion at this point, and we will have to wait for public comment at the end to hear from the public.
Okay. I don't know the Robert's rules, but is it possible to add in an additional public comment?
Well, I don't know about the precedent for that. I don't know. We are actually trying to discuss both the public health advice and what we know to the best of our ability at this point. I hesitate to say that we're going to be swayed by public opinion as opposed to those other things.
I agree with you, Mary, that we should not start that precedent right now.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, Dr. Youngberg, I mean, you mentioned it. Do you think it would be helpful to hear from the public at the end of our discussion?
Well, the only problem I have is I don't actually understand Robert's rules as well as, you know, some of the other members. So I would need to look to see what it does because it could set us up to be in a strange position. I don't know. We haven't done it since I've been superintendent. That's why I said, I'm not sure
Yeah.
about the Robert's rules. Can we do it? I mean, I feel like a lot of people responded to the survey, which is the next slide. And I feel like we got a good sense of where people stand on the mask mandate. And it is true that we're not actually using public comment to drive the decision, but it is nice to know where people are coming from. And in this particular survey, as I shared last week, every one of our participant groups is divided. The staff, the students, and the parents are pretty well divided. There's no, you know, it's not clear that everyone wants the mask mandate gone February 28th, or everyone wants it to be in place till the end of the school year, or everyone wants it to be, you know, sometime in March. We're pretty evenly divided across all participant groups. I just didn't know. I figured people were, you know, are listening to this discussion because they have an interest in it. So I was just trying to figure out if there's some way to accommodate them without putting us in a position where we have to continue down, you know, a strange path as a result of Robert's rules.
Right. I mean, you know, I kind of agree. I mean, based on what, you know, Tracy mentioned, and just the fact that I think parents care about this quite a bit, I think it'd be wise for us we can have our discussion. I think we should have that first, but we should certainly let the public speak as well, you know, after this. After
They
hearing,
had a
you know,
chance at the
presentation.
beginning. This packet has been publicized. You know, I do want to maintain, you know, the decorum of the meetings as we have, and there's 2 periods of public comment. So I am sorry if it didn't reach all parents, but this is a discussion about public health recommendations, the governor's outlining of when it's beginning and starting, and what we as a board are going to be doing in the schools. And I'm not going to be swayed by public, you know,
We had
opinions.
a reading that we had to do, you know, chapters 4 and 5, and it did
No,
mention
they're
that,
not
you know,
due
well,
today. I mean,
what's
so
that?
we're not talking about public health issues in an open setting. So could we continue with this report at this point?
You know, I'm just gonna go ahead and make the motion.
No,
I
you're
mean-
not going to make a motion. I mean,
Why not?
because this is not, you know, the place where we're doing. Did you finish the presentation?
I haven't finished it yet, no.
No. So
I
can we
just-
please finish the presentation?
Dr.
The other
Youngberg
thing is,
is,
we cannot have a discussion if we don't
Yep.
see the entire presentation.
I
And this is
understand, but
not a
Dr. Youngberg
public
has
forum.
asked the board to speak and to ask questions, and she even intimated that she thinks it'd be valuable to possibly hear from the public. She asked for it. I'd like the board to vote on a motion to hear public comment after the board has their discussion on the mask information.
The problem with that, Cody, is that we don't know if we will be violating the Robert's rules. And therefore, I am very hesitant to even consider a motion right now, since we do not know that part. And we don't want to do anything illegal. I'm sure that you don't want that. So as a member of this board and having been in the board for a long time, I will respectfully suggest that we keep the public comment for the last, and is our discussion now and our responsibility to make that decision once the superintendent finishes her presentation.
So, but okay, so we're going to listen to Dr. Youngberg's presentation, vote on it, and then hear what the public has to say?
No, the public comment comes at the end of every meeting and at the beginning. And
I know, but
unless we get,
the vote,
Cody.
Yeah.
Listen to me for 1 minute, please. The vote, our vote is our vote. And we have seen the survey, number one. Number two, we need to get further clarification about the Roberts rules that I know I'm not saying it right in English, but for future
Pretty sure
meeting,
we're
maybe.
following Robert's rules right now. I made the motion.
I
Mary,
would
it's your
like
job
you-
to
the
ask.
meeting to
to
continue.
entertain
You
to see
are
if
out
there's
of
a
order,
second.
Cody. You are out of order. So
Yes,
we
and I
are
am.
going to continue a presentation, and this is not something that is up for discussion at the moment.
And I just, I want to just apologize for suggesting, as I stated when I suggested it, I'm not sure about the Roberts Rules piece. I was just wondering because no one spoke in the beginning of the meeting, which I thought was unusual. That's all I said. So I just want to put that out.
I think we're out of order as a board by not, by you, Mary, not checking to see if there's a second to my motion. I think that would be
Please
orderly.
continue the presentation as outlined on our agenda.
So I only have 2 slides left of the presentation. One is my recommendation to the board, what I think should happen and why. And then a few things I need the board to be aware of for whenever the mask mandate comes to an end. So, oops, I don't know what's happening here. Okay. So I am recommending that the mask mandate stay in place through Tuesday, March 15th. And the reason why I'd like it to stay in place for a couple weeks beyond the governor's mandate is because I want the opportunity for our classroom teachers to address the fact that there will be a number of students who continue to wear masks after the mandate. And I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable with their own personal choice. So I want that to be addressed in all of our classrooms at all grade levels across the board. I think that waiting till March 15th gives us some time to see if the case rate data is actually moving in the right direction. It also gives us a chance to see if there's anything peculiar happening in the districts that shows February 28th. It gives us an opportunity to have at least one more student vaccine clinic, the one that's sponsored by the town and the one that we're adding for 12 to 17-year-olds. It gives us an opportunity to discuss the matter again on the March 9th Board of Ed meeting. We're expecting CDC guidance on masks, so that might be issued by that point. And it gives us an opportunity to formally address the district's mask policy. So I'm recommending to the board, we look at March 15th. And again, from the survey data, I know that may not be very popular with a lot of people because we are split across all participant groups. But in my mind, as I stated earlier, superintendents are placed in a very strange position, not having, experience beyond COVID and public health, which is why Patrice Sulik is on the call. And this at least gives us an opportunity to see that everything's moving in the right direction. I also want to remind everyone on the call that regardless of when the mask mandate ends, the school bus mandate, the mask mandate on school buses is a federal mandate. I believe it's supposed to end on March 18th, but we have no indication whether that's actually going to expire on March 18th or whether that's going to be extended. But right now, even if the mask mandate goes away in schools, students must wear masks on school buses. That's a federal mandate. We have no control over it. Also, there's a federal mandate for all early Head Start and Head Start classrooms. So they will continue to have to wear masks whenever this mask mandate ends. And I also, my COVID team and I have to still decide if we are going to require masks for the students that return or the staff members that return after infection for days 6 through 10. That is a CDC guidance right now. And we have to determine if that is guidance that the school district is going to follow. So again, you have my recommendation for March 15th and my reasons why, and the additional considerations that I would like everyone to remember when they're thinking about this. Are there any other questions for me or potentially for Patrice?
I have a comment.
I can't, oh, there you are, okay.
Yeah, I just
Go
wanted to
ahead.
mention that it's a great idea what you said, because if we're gonna have a clinic vaccine in March, if we stay until March 15 with the mask, that would be a great idea that you're having in your mind for the district.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments?
I think I guess my hand cannot be seen when I get lifted here.
All right, Katina and then Paula.
Thank you. So I absolutely agree with that recommendation, Dr. Youngberg. Number one, we have that vaccine clinic March 4th, and I know all the children are going to get that notification, hopefully. And I've posted it myself on Facebook. Number two, it protects the adults that work with the children. And number three, 2 more weeks is good. It's not a big sacrifice. It will help the children learn that there are those who are going to choose to keep the mask, because I'm very afraid of bullying or ridiculing or criticizing. Either way, those, how kids are. So teaching is a priority. Thank you.
Paula?
Yes, Katina, that's a good point. And that was certainly a concern of mine, that once we have some children choosing to wear a mask versus not, how that will be perceived by other children and their relationships with each other. I truly believe that holding off until March is a good idea for a couple of reasons. One being that hopefully the vaccination rate will go up. Also, weather does matter. And we find that the warmer the weather, the less airborne the virus is. So we can hope that as the weather warms, we have less risk and we're able to make any accommodations. It gives us that time to make any accommodations we need to make within the schools in order to keep everybody safe. I do work in healthcare. I have seen the horrid effects of the virus. I know how, Katina, your thoughts about protecting the elderly, very, very true. We also know that the flu was really at bay last year and the past 2 years where we wore masks, but obviously we're not going to continue forever. But I think that holding off puts us in a much better position to deal with what's coming down the pike.
I'd like to know if Mark, Ilda, or Brendan have some comments. Mark?
Yeah, I don't disagree with the 15th, but actually I would prefer to see us go to the end of March, just for the reason we talked about in terms of the weather. One of the critical needs was for ventilation in the classroom and air movement. And I really think waiting till the end of March makes more sense in that viewpoint. I'm also concerned that, I don't know, I've seen it happen. I recognize a pattern that every time the rate gets lower, we reduce the mandates and the rate goes back up. So we put the mandates back in. I really think at some point we have to just leave them alone. But I won't disagree with March 15th, but I would prefer to see them go to the end of March. At least my understanding is we'll have a chance March 9th to review what little bit of interview we have there. But I definitely think we should wait till the weather gets weather, and especially with the ventilation in the classrooms.
Thank you. Brendan?
I just want to say, I think the March 15th date is a good compromise. I don't think we should be making our kids the guinea pigs and ripping the masks off on the first day. I definitely think we need to see them go soon, but I don't think waiting an additional 2 weeks is going to really inconvenience anyone, and it'll let us get some more data about what actually happens when, there's a lot of proof out there that this is an effective mitigation strategy. What happens when we take that away?
Thank you. Ilda?
So I had my Robert's Rules book that I was trying to look into to see if there's anything about a third.
Ilda, we're
public
talking about the
comment.
mask mandate.
I'm sorry. I was just letting you guys know that's what I was doing. That's why my focus was away from the screen. But as far as the mask mandate, I agree. Either March 15th, I agree with Dr. Youngberg, either March 15th or the end of March, when the weather starts to get a little nicer and they can open up the windows and better ventilation. And that's about it though. And I agree 100%. If you want to wear a mask, which I'm going to wear a mask until it gets really warmer out. And I hope that nobody else is picked on, the kids are not picked on if they choose to wear a mask, but that's par for the cause. You know, kids will be kids. Hopefully they won't do that. They won't pull each other's masks off. We just have to keep an eye on that. But I think March 15th is a great compromise. The end of March is better. That's it for me.
So are there any last comments on this recommendation from the superintendent before we create a motion?
Cody
Yeah.
has his hand
Yeah.
up.
Oh, I didn't see. Cody?
Yeah, thanks, Katina. The ventilation, I think, argument is pretty solid and is actually one of the only things that's, you know, sort of guided by the science and the data. But this whole idea of waiting an extra 2 weeks past the state guidelines just to make other kids feel comfortable does not sit well with me at all. Like, what about the kids who, if we do decide to extend it to March 15th, what about the kids who still want to wear them or whose parents still want to wear them? Are we still going to, I don't know, try and coddle them so that they aren't bullied by other kids?
The justification has to do with perhaps increasing vaccination in the next 2 weeks, the numbers going down statewide. That was one issue that somebody brought up, and it has nothing to do with my decision about if there's ridicule about masks. The decision is based on other things.
It seems that the decision to extend it an extra 2 weeks was really tied to this idea of easing kids back into the idea of not wearing them. But
Both. I'm going to interrupt
Yeah.
you, Cody. It was about both, as I understood. And I think I was the one about the person who brought bullying, which in my experience as a social worker is imperative and good to prevent that anybody is.
Right, so why would we
is that-
why would we ever stop having the kids wear masks if that's what we're making the decision?
No,
based on?
no. The
We are
decision
not
is being
basing the
made
decision on that. And
on that.
so
Okay.
here are the recommendations. We could also extend it further at our next Board of Ed meeting. Right now, I believe many of you expressed a willingness to accept March 15th. I also think that's a little early, but there's some indication that many districts are going to go in this direction, and that the numbers of vaccinated individuals is increasing.
Can I make a motion?
Yes,
I make a motion that we further this discussion about masks until our next meeting on March 9th.
No,
And that way, no,
Ilda, let me interrupt you.
motion.
Yeah, but let
We
me
wanna
interrupt you
vote.
before you make it. We need to have a vote because the mandate of the state is on the 28th and we're not meeting until the 9th. Therefore, we need a motion to approve or not approve the superintendent's recommendation. So I'm making that motion to extend mask until March 15th with the proviso that we might further extend that on our special meeting of March 9th.
I second.
so now we can, is there any last discussion on that motion before we vote? Mark, I see your hand.
Yeah, my question is just procedurally, you have an action item listed separate that calls for the vote. So I don't know if you can actually you should take the vote now during your discussion. We're on a discussion agenda item, not a vote, but you have an action item, which is number 9A, which is the vote on the mandates. So
Right, I thought
whoever set
we-
up the agenda separated them.
We
I-
moved them
it's-
both up.
So I stand corrected, Mark. So can we go to the item of taking action, please?
Well, that was what we decided at the beginning of the meeting, to move the discussion and action items up.
Okay,
Okay, so if that is so, then I reinstate my motion. And who seconded me?
Alicia.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have something to say, Mary.
Yes, go ahead.
So we've decided that we're just gonna go ahead and vote on this, not hear from the public. Is that right?
They had a chance at the beginning of the meeting and nobody came forward. And this packet has been, there was a newspaper article that we would be discussing this at this meeting tonight. They can come, it's 2 weeks, then there will be another meeting. Paula?
I don't know if you even want any further discussion on that point, but my perception, again, I don't have Robert's rules in front of me, is we have public comment at the beginning and the end, and public comment in the middle may be perceived as having a discussion with the board, which we do not. That is not what we do. That is not allowed in our meeting. So just a thought.
Madam Chair, can we take the vote, please?
Yes, Holly, will you do the roll call?
Yes, just one point of clarification. Ms. Ray had made a motion to further the discussion until 3:09.
Nobody seconded it, so it just dies.
Can we just withdraw that then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I
All right.
withdraw my motion.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Galucci,
Aye.
Ms. Ray,
So what are we voting on, March 15th?
the motion on the table is to continue the mask mandate until the next regular Board of Ed meeting on March 9th.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah,
Huh?
No,
All right.
it's till March 15th. Isn't it correct?
Yes.
Yes, to the motion, I'll say it again. We continue the mask mandate until March 15th. And on March 9th, we can even extend it further if necessary, but at least until March 15th. That was my motion.
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Kaban on,
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill,
Aye.
Mr. Doyle,
aye,
Ms. Haney,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera,
Aye.
Mr. Barr.
Nay.
Thank you.
All right, we also moved up the discussion of presentation from Friar Architecture regarding the Wyndham High School technology package. And that also is followed by an action item. So, Dr. Younger, do I just hand it off to Friar here?
I believe so, and I think they have information to share. I see Bob trying to look at all my screens here. There he is. Okay, and Jahala, okay. It's
Okay.
all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Good evening. For the record, Bob Roach, Friar Architecture out of Farmington, Connecticut. I came before the board not too long ago seeking approval of the furniture package for the high school construction project, which also includes the Early Childhood Center and the District Central Office. We're back tonight with a technology package for your approval, and I'll be coming to you again in the near future with for approval of the playground package for the Early Childhood Center located at the high school. The technology package has been reviewed and approved by the building committee and should also be approved by this board tonight. We will need the chairperson's signature on the state's SCG 042 form indicating approval, and I believe that form is in Holly's possession. You received a narrative of the technology package in your board packet. And to present the technology package tonight, I'd like to introduce our consultant, who is also a consultant to the district on other matters, Jahala Grouse of Ambient Data.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jahala. Thank you for having me. As Bob mentioned, there was a narrative and some accompanying information regarding the technology package in your packets. And I have a very brief slide presentation for you. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So this is the phase 3 technology package review. As I mentioned, there's a narrative of the technology equipment that was included with your packet tonight. And basically what that narrative is it just gives a brief description and overview of the technology that will be provided and installed in the newly renovated high school, early childhood center, and the new central offices. The technology consists of things like your computer, hardware, software, and installation. And it's separated into 5 different categories. Those categories include computer peripherals and related equipment, interactive boards, digital signage and related equipment, network and wireless equipment, servers and storage, and a phone system. We are going to be utilizing state contract awards where possible that we find on the DAS procurement website to facilitate the procurement of the technology. However, there are 3 pieces of this that will need to be bid out through a public invitation to bid. And those include the interactive displays, also known as smart displays. And we have requested a sole source. We've written a letter requesting approval for sole source so that we would not accept any alternates to the smart product, since the district has made such a substantial investment in the smart product. The other piece is the firewall that will also need to be bid out along with a new phone system. So I'm just going to briefly go through each category so you can get a good feel of what is included in these categories. So the first category, your computers, peripherals, and related equipment. That includes the desktop computers and monitors. And these are all items that are eligible for reimbursement under the construction project. So these would be your office computers, the computers that are going to be attached to the smart displays in the classrooms, computer lab computers. The other piece that's included in this is the Raptor visitor security system. I know that this was a big item that the district wanted to procure. It was part of the original ed spec. And the information on that security system is also included in your packet. Charging station would be for laptops, Chromebooks. Because the high school has a 1-to-1 device program, we would not be populating all of the classrooms with charging stations. It just didn't make sense to try to fit that into the budget. So we will be strategically placing one in the media center where students could go and charge their devices if they needed to. It also includes some peripherals and printers. That would be things like surge protectors that you would connect to your computers. And there are a minimal number of printers. As you know, you have a lease with the high volume machines, so those will be strategically placed throughout the building to take advantage of those. The second category would be your interactive boards, smart boards, digital signage, and related equipment. So the boards in your early childhood learning center would be 65-inch. The larger boards would be in the high school and in some of your conference rooms. Some of the displays, the smart boards would have built-in PCs. so that they would be fully functional without an external computer attached to it. There were a couple of conference rooms where this was needed, and in certain areas like the locker rooms. TV monitors are also part of this package, and those TV monitors are for digital signage, and they would also be used in the infant toddler rooms instead of interactive smart displays. And then also in some areas where you would need office monitors. So for example, you may have a need for a monitor to see the security system in an office. Digital media players are also included in the package with the digital signage, and that will give you that nice polished look for in the cafeteria. You could have your menus. Also, it's a nice way to communicate with your students and staff and have your announcements on those digital displays. The third category is network equipment and Wi-Fi wireless. It includes a firewall, network switches, and wireless access points. The network switches are really the core of what is going to drive the technology, not only in this building, but this building will serve as kind of a hub for a head end for the rest of your district. It just makes sense to really take advantage of this new state-of-the-art technology, and it will be able to support the rest of the district. Wireless access points will provide you with coverage in all of your classrooms. This will allow your students to take their devices with them and be in any classroom, whether it's a English class, an ELA class, or world language class. They'll be able to connect to the wireless network wherever they travel throughout the school and in common learning areas. The fourth category is servers and storage. We kept this to a minimum. We have 2 servers and 1 SAN. We call it a SAN. It stands for Storage Area Network. So this will give you the storage and the ability to have the servers that you need to run and operate your network. Category 5 is the phone system. And this is what we're doing is this piece, as I mentioned, will be sent out to public bid. And this will include a hosted voice over IP system. This will allow the district to implement a system that doesn't require a lot of overhead and maintenance and management. A lot of times these phone systems require a lot of that overhead. And this will be a hosted solution where you don't have the burden of a gateway for the phone system on site and worrying about having phone and telecommunications expert to fix these phone systems. What we're proposing is that you'll have a vendor who will host those services and manage everything for you, so that it's simply an email or a phone call to support, and they handle whether you change a classroom or you have a new staff member and you need to set up a new extension, a new voicemail. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it can be very disruptive in a school building to have to worry about these types of things. And then obviously includes IP phones. And all that means IP is that these phones will be powered by your network switches and will run over your data network. So also provided in the packet were some cost estimates, and they're broken out into 2 different areas. The project was separated into 2 state projects with state project numbers. There's one for central office and then one for the high school and the childhood center. So this shows the costs of eligible items and ineligible items. We really tried to keep to a minimum those ineligible items. Those are the items that you purchase that you won't get reimbursed for under the project. And this next screen shows the costs with an added 7% increase due to phasing. As you know, this is a multi-year project. So we had to build in some cost increases so that, you know, when it comes time to order some of this equipment 2 years down the road, we'll be able to make sure that you're covered for those cost increases as time goes by. I don't have the detail of all of those items in the slide presentation, but as I mentioned, it is in your packet. So at this point, if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions? Oh, yes, Brendan O'Neill.
A big shock, I have questions, right? My first question is, you know, all the desktops in there, is that going to be in addition to staff laptops or instead of?
So that's a good question. So no laptops are included in the technology package. Laptops are not an item that are eligible for reimbursement under a state project like this. So we really try to maximize the funding that you have by including only eligible items. It is my understanding that the teachers do have laptops, students do have devices. So it would be in addition to what your staff already has.
Okay. And then on top of that, like if the teach staff members have 2 devices, has any thought been put into what the ongoing maintenance costs are going to be? I know you're not too familiar with my background, but I work in IT as well. And that's one of the things, you know, when clients are looking to cut costs, we often find users with 3 or 4 devices and we try to get them down to 1 to control costs. That would be more for Tracy than you.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a really good question. I don't put your operating budget together. So, I mean, I am more than happy to share information on that. But I would defer as far as your operating budget goes on maintaining those devices such as a second device and laptops.
Okay. And my other question is the hosted phone system. Is there any cost estimates as to what the ongoing cost for that will be? Because I know that's been looked at in the past and the ongoing operating costs have it ruled out as prohibitive.
Yeah, so those are included I did provide, let me just see if I have them. I think they are in your packet. And there would be recurring costs to that.
Yes.
So the project would cover your first year of all of those hosted services. And just, I didn't do it on this project for you, but you know, I have priced this out before, and I can tell you that if you do a cost benefit with this type of a system, which is one of the reasons why we're bidding it out too, because I did get prices from state contracts and I felt that they were too high. So I thought that it would be in the best interest of the district to bid this out. But I think if you were to take a look at this cost benefit over the course of 7 years, you would find that it does make sense to have a hosted solution, especially if you don't have the staff in place to manage it. Especially with phone communications and being able to make those phone calls. And this will be integrated with your paging system. So you'll be able to make emergency pages from any location and, you know, dial 911 and things of that nature. So it would really be a decision of the district to take a look at cost benefit from that end.
Okay. I just know many times it's per user and they count each classroom as a user and it gets expensive very fast, but thank you.
Sure.
I can't see everybody, so if any other board members have questions, please ask.
I do, Mary. It's Paula.
Go ahead.
An even bigger surprise, Brendan, that I have a question on technology. You were talking about the charging stations, and as one person who can never remember to charge her equipment, is that going to be adequate, or are we going to have students running to these stations, for instance, in the library, to get their Chromebooks or whatever up and running?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That is always a challenge. Trying to encourage students to not forget. I personally will forget too. There's no guarantees that they won't. I mean, there are some suggestions, you know, I have a lot of experience in working with school districts, and I have seen that. And a lot of times, for instance, a media center would be a good spot, or you could pick a couple other locations where maybe you do have a few loaners, half dozen loaners or something, or a dozen loaners strategically placed, so a student could go and sign that out. And then, you know, they would return it at the end of the day. Probably becomes a hassle, so hopefully they'd remember to charge and come to school charge versus bringing their charger in. But there are some other things that, you know, you could implement that would make fiscal sense for the school versus deploying these large charging carts all throughout the district or throughout the building. There are some existing carts. There's nothing saying you can't use a cart that you already have. You could decide to place that in an area where it could be accessible by students too.
Thank you.
Mary, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a question for Bob. Just remind me again, Bob, because this is new in my experience that we're actually voting on building stuff. Essentially, my vote is more just an agreement, I guess, because I'm not actually taking any responsibility for the dollars here. And I'm assuming that these costs that are ineligible, the building committee is going to have to find some other items to delineate so that they don't go over the total budget. How is that being handled, Bob?
All of these costs were accounted for. We had budgets that were set by Colliers, the owner's project manager, in their bundle of soft costs, this being one of them. Furniture, fixtures and equipment, technology, the playscape. We had targets that we had to hit and design to, and we are within those budgets. As with anything throughout the building construction or any of these other phases, there are items that are eligible and ineligible, and we've tried to keep the ineligible items to a minimum throughout all the packages.
The ineligible items have to come out of the total bond that we have. It just means the city will not get reimbursed from the state for these ineligible items, but they can't exceed the total bond that was voted on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, this vote is approving, you know, that we've seen the package, that, you know, and the way that it's, you know, divided up, I guess. We're not approving the funding of it. Are there any other questions?
I guess, Mary, if you're accepting a motion at this point, I would vote that we accept the technology package as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, and thanking Jahela and Bob for that presentation. I would like to ask if there's further discussion. I'm trying to see if any little hands are up. So with no further questions, let's have a roll call vote.
Dr. Gulicky,
Aye.
Ms. Ray,
Aye.
Dr. Kaban Owen,
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill,
Aye.
Mr. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Haney,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera,
Aye.
Mr. Barr.
Aye.
Thank you.
So the motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Excuse me, good evening. It's Scott from Colliers. Really, there needs to be, I apologize, I was just trying to look it up. The state has actually split from a funding standpoint, the project into two separate projects, one for the Board of Education and one for the high school. So there actually needs to be two separate motions, one for the Board of Ed and one for the high school project. And it should just reference that plans and estimates dated February 4th, 2022. But if you could, I apologize. I was trying to get it in front of me, but we do need to have two separate motions to meet the state requirements.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We weren't aware of that. So are we retracting this other motion we just made? Or is that we need to make a second motion? Because I
Mary,
didn't,
I think we need to withdraw the motion that I just made and make two separate motions.
What are the two motions on?
He's telling us that the state needs us to vote on each package separately as opposed to a package as one unit, but to vote on the high school version of it and vote on the Board of Ed version of it. Just as you see in the, if I could take a moment, the thing they showed us with the grand total, it shows central office and HSECC, and I guess they want to vote on each of those line items separately. Is that correct, Scott?
Correct. I mean, I've got draft motions that I could actually bring up on the screen if that would assist the Board of Education in
yes.
filing these. So
Yes.
with your permission, if I could share my screen and I can bring the motions up, Mary?
Oh, do I do that?
Or
Holly, can you let Scott Pellman share the screen?
I believe he can share. I think he was just asking your permission.
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh.
There we go. Can try and make it a little bigger. Can everyone see that?
Yes, I'm just trying to sort of jot it down.
And what this is doing is this is for each of the projects, this is language directly taken from the state form SCG 042. And it just references when if the last sentence when it says have been reviewed and approved for this project on the date shown above, you'll be signing that document, and the date shown above is the date of tonight that the Board of Education on 8/23/2022 approved this, or made this motion. So once the motion is made, that'll go into record, and then this document, these two separate documents then would be signed by the committee chair.
Mark, were you suggesting that this second motion here seems to be for the central office line item?
No,
No.
my suggestion was that the first motion I made obviously was not what was required by the state. So that I think we need to do whatever we have to do to remove or get rid of that motion. And then we need to make two separate motions. The motion had to be made in two separate states. So we need to make these two motions, but we need to get rid of the first motion that
All
I
right,
made.
first of all, I guess we can withdraw the Mark. Do you do that? the bad motion that.
Normally I would withdraw it before the vote. Now that it's been voted on, I'm not 100% sure how you withdraw it.
Scott, I mean,
But what I might, is Scott Pellin from Colliers, what I might suggest is just make a very quick motion to rescind the previous motion and then just take up the 2 new motions.
All right, I'll make the motion that we rescind my previous motion asking for approval on the technology data.
Second.
I'll second that. Nope.
Okay, I
Brandon, you
think
did.
Brendan seconded.
Yep.
Thank you. Can we vote on that?
Yep.
Holly? Keep this screen up, please.
Dr. Galucci,
Aye.
Ms. Ray,
Aye.
Dr. Kaban Owen,
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill,
Aye.
Mr. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Haney,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera,
Aye.
and Mr. Barr.
Aye.
Thank you.
So now we have a motion, we need a motion that the Board of Education certify that the Wyndham High School Phase 3 Technology Final Plans and Project Manual as prepared for bidding and dated 2/4/2022, and the professional cost estimate dated 2/4/2022 have been reviewed and approved for this project on the date shown above.
So moved.
Okay, Mark moved and Ilda seconded? Is that true?
Correct.
I quit after this. No, okay. Further discussion.
Yes, sorry, I
Yes,
need
thank
to
you.
clarify
Cody.
because what I see in the packet, there's plenty of information in the packet about the Wyndham High School technology package, but what is this BOE Phase 3 technology final plans? How is that different from the high school?
It's all part of the Scott Pellman from Colliers. It's all part of the same presentation that Jahala provided tonight. In the estimate she put up, there was 2 different line items. One was for the technology for the Board of Education, and one was for the technology associated with the high school and ECC project. And that then totaled what she also presented. So the state has just asked us that we break the project apart and track the dollars separately, which is we're doing as requested by the state.
Scott, if I may for a moment, Mary, Scott, I think the confusion comes on your grid that you prepared for us, or she prepared for us. It lists, line item is central office. You're now replacing that with Board of Ed, whereas the other line item was HS/ECC. Those are the 2 line items that we have that you say gave to us.
Yeah, the state is referring to it as a BOE project, but I think if you said central office, that would be fine as well.
Yeah, I'd prefer that because I mean, we're talking about computers that are going into the central office building, right, Tracy? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, can we
That's
change that?
correct.
Okay, we weren't on that motion yet, but so
I
we're
know,
on
but
the one
before I
that's
could
above.
vote on
my
this, I
God.
needed to know we weren't also voting on the central office stuff.
Okay, beautiful.
Okay.
I move the motion
no.
that the board, what?
Wait, we have one motion,
We
the
need to
above
vote.
one for the high school. We need to vote on that now, correct?
I
Right.
thought
Yep.
we,
Yes.
okay, we didn't vote on that. Sorry.
Dr. Galucci,
Aye.
Ms. Ray,
Aye.
Dr. Kaban Owen,
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill,
Aye.
Mr. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Haney,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera,
Aye.
Mr. Barr.
Aye.
Thank you.
So thanking the members, especially, Mark and Cody for this rewording. The next
Thank you.
motion is motion that the Board of Education certify that the Wyndham Central Office Phase 3 Technology Final Plans and Project Manual, don't move that, as prepared for bidding and dated 2/4/2022, and the professional cost estimate dated 2/4/2022 have been reviewed and approved for this project on the dates shown above. Do I have a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved. I beat him.
Cody, did you move it? I'm just asking because I heard several voices.
Cody can have it.
And second, Brendan,
Sure.
I don't,
Yes.
discussion, confusion. Ready for the vote?
Dr. Galucci,
Aye.
Ms. Ray,
Aye.
Dr. Kaban Owen,
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill,
Aye.
Mr. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Haney,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera,
Aye.
and Mr. Barr.
Aye.
Thank you.
I don't know, Mary, we may need to take your hammer away from me, Mary. I'm not sure. No, you can't use it. I'm sorry.
I'm beating myself.
I heard her say she was going to quit after this.
I did say that. Okay, we have a budget workshop as our next item.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Before I do that, I forgot to mention to the board when we first started that I wanted to shout out to the Wyndham High School girls basketball team. For last night, they became the ECC champs and we're really proud of them. So I apologize for not mentioning that earlier because they did a great job last night. Played in the Mohegan Sun Arena and brought home the title. So we're proud of them. All right, let me share my screen here. Nope. My screen is frozen. All right, hopefully you can see my screen. I'm not sure. Thumbs up, you can see. Okay, I see some heads. Okay. All right, so this is the first of 2 budget workshops. It's an opportunity for me to share my thinking and for board members to ask questions. We're not voting on anything tonight. We're just listening and trying to get a sense of where what's called the superintendent's recommended budget is coming from. When the board does make the decision after the 2 Board of Ed workshops, the budget that they move forward is actually the Board of Education's recommended budget. So this is even though it says Board of Education budget workshop, this is actually the superintendent's recommended budget. So the goal is obviously to give you the information about the budget, any supporting narrative, and give you an opportunity to talk and ask questions. All right, so I always like to back up a little bit before we move forward. I think it's important because the budget's not being developed in isolation. All the things that happened before and that will happen in, moving forward all play a role in where we are. So just as a reminder, let me just bring these up here. I took over on November 4th of 2019. So I inherited the 2019-2020 budget, 47 million and change there, almost 48 million. It was a year that required us to do some work to balance the budget. We reduced a ton of professional development contracts and overall spending and had to do a number of what's called true up transfers, meaning that the money wasn't where it needed to be. So I have to shout out to Rita Parsiak for all the work that she did that very first year to get us in a position to close out the 1920 budget with a surplus that we put into the health insurance fund. So that this was sort of our first year with my team and I working behind the scenes to try to get us in a good position and a better position financially. The next year, 2021, I put forth a budget that asked for a 5.8% increase. It showed a number of staffing and equipment cuts. The Board of Ed, trying to support the district, suggested that we not make any cuts, and they moved a full 9.78% increase to the Board of Finance. We were then able to reduce that 9.78 increase to 7.6% because we heard there was an increase in alliance funding and we had access to grants that could be applied to the IT equipment. So we ended up asking for a 7.6% increased budget. We also, at the time that we were going through the budget process with the Board of Finance, we were told the district would be receiving $1.49 million in CARES Act funds. That was the first of the funding that we would receive in response to the pandemic. The Board of Finance ended up approving a 1.3% increase from our 7.6% request. Was a budget of 48 million and change. And because we were slated to receive funds and because COVID had already started impacting us that year, we ended up with a surplus of $1.2 million, which was returned to the Wyndham taxpayers. For the next year, We developed a budget in 21-22 that was a 2% increase, and the Board of Education accepted that budget. We moved it forward. The Board of Finance allowed us to use the new, what was then new, Connecticut General Statute 10-248A, which now allows school systems to carry over a 2% carryover. So the Board of Finance approved our ability to use that special fund and offered the district a 1% increase over the MBR. The budget total for that year was $49,085,741. We are, I should say for this year, because it's this year, we are currently projecting a surplus. And obviously, we're working closely on making sure the district has everything it needs and keeping our Finance and Audit Committee up to date. I do want to point out that when we use 10-248A, it does not impact the minimum budget requirement, the MBR. So right now, the district is in fairly decent fiscal shape because of our ESSER funds and our ability to move funds around. But when the ESSER funding is gone, the fact that we are not impacting the MBR will be an issue for us. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. Because it will play a role in our continued fiscal health. All right, the goal of the team is sustainability. We are really trying to get to a place where we can sustain the fiscal resources, personnel, institutional knowledge, facilities, equipment, community partnerships, anything that's going to support the school system. We sort of slow and steady wins the race in this case. We don't want the ups and downs. We want sustainability. So it's how we're talking about how do we make this work and how do we look at multiple years at a time, not just proposing budgets in isolation, because everything that happens impacts the next thing that happens. So right now we are projecting a surplus, and the reasons why we're projecting a surplus is actually multiple reasons. One is we have a number of unfilled positions, and everyone knows COVID has impacted our ability to staff positions and has impacted it's not just education. A lot of people have left jobs that they've been in, chosen new careers, done a whole bunch of things that maybe they wouldn't have done prior to COVID. So we have unfilled positions and we have an inability for substitutes in many cases. So we have extra money in the budget that would have been applied to staffing if COVID wasn't underway. We are able to carry over 2% in that non-lapsing account, which is what we did last year. So there's money there that wouldn't have normally been there until they put that new statute in place. We have been told by Representative Johnson that we're receiving additional alliance funds. That has not yet been approved or been, I guess the state hasn't told us that that's actually going to happen, but Representative Johnson said it is going to happen and the state will confirm it shortly. We have the ability to carry over grants like IDEA and Title I, and of course we have ESSER funds. So for all of these reasons, we're projecting a surplus this year. And again, we keep the Finance and Audit Committee updated each month of where we are with that surplus. From the book that the board members received, this is page 85. This is the page we call our big buckets. We have set up the big buckets in this case to show a 0% increase. But I just wanted to make sure that you are aware that we moved from 14 buckets down to 12 because we combined textbooks, library books, and other supplies have been moved into the number 10, the supply line, so that condensing them. Oops, sorry about that. When we developed the budget, we did it by meeting with all the principals and department leaders. We basically allowed them to request everything that they thought they needed for next year, whether that be staffing, materials, equipment, furniture, you name it. We said, just tell us everything you want. When we developed the budget from their request list, the budget would have been well over 12%, entirely too high in my opinion. So then we strategically sat down and reduced some of the staffing vacancies, given a tier 1 focus, and understanding that there were a number of staffing positions on their wish list that have not been able to be filled in some cases for an entire school year. So we made some strategic decisions and we were able to move that 12+% increase down to 6.79. And then we determined that we could probably fund that 6.79% increase and move forward asking the taxpayers for 0% at this point. And this is the breakdown. It's also found on page 86 of your budget book. This is the breakdown of how we proposed being able to cover that 6.79% increase and to ask the town for a zero. The increase in alliance funds, carryover of several grants, the 2% carryover based on the new state statute. And then we learned just recently that the workers' comp fund had a pretty significant increase for us, almost $377,000. We are able to pre-fund that this fiscal year. And that whole total amount is over $3 million. And we believe we can cover it as indicated on the screen. And again, these are all assumptions. And we're assuming that all of these things are going to happen again. If they weren't to happen, we would have to go back and figure out how we were going to fund that 6.79% increase. But right now, we're assuming we have the funds to do what it says on the screen. And just to sort of bring it back to the fact that we're talking dollars, but the reality is what we're really talking about is the school system and its sustained, support of our students. So you'll see in our budget book on page 9 is our district strategic priorities. They will continue into 22-23. We are planning to reconvene the strategic planning committee. We have new board members that would be invited. We have obviously new parents, always have new parents coming in and out of the system, and they should be included, as well as staff members that might have an interest in being a part of the process. So that's going to happen in the summer of 2022. Our ultimate goal is to review all of our strategic priorities and connect it back to the Wyndham High School Portrait of the Graduate, to be sure that we are actually supporting our youngest kiddos and our oldest kiddos. So that's our ultimate goal. Also want to let the Board of Ed members know that we will have a finalized list of capital improvements very soon. We have some things that are already being considered, such as what's up on your screen, major heating upgrades for 3 of our elementary schools, new elevators for Wyndham Middle School. We had a security audit done on all of our buildings. I believe it was in 2018-19. And there was a number of recommendations made in that audit. So we are considering moving some of those recommendations to the capital improvements list. And although no decisions have been made on the elementary consolidation project, the fact is one of our elementary schools does not have a separate gymnasium cafeteria. It's one room is the gymnasium, cafeteria, and auditorium. So we had proposed the potential of a Sweeney school addition. So that may or may not be placed on this particular capital improvements list, but it's definitely one of the things we've considered. The issue is that there's been no decisions made on the consolidation yet. So it's just on our list of considerations. So just to recap, we are at 49,085,741 in my recommended budget. We're asking for a 0% increase from the town. So the dollar amount stays the same. Although we're asking the town for a 0% increase, we're letting you know it's a 6.79% increase covered by carryovers and the potential for a surplus and the increased alliance funds. And again, all that information is included in the budget book.
Okay.
All right, I hear someone who's not muted. I don't know who that is. Questions? Oh.
Yeah, Tracy, a question on the capital improvement line. Are you now doing a 3 or 4 or 5 year spread of our capital improvements timeline?
So we did start that big spreadsheet that allows us to put in multiple projects over time. So yes, I would imagine that we can certainly say, here's what we want to cover in year 1, year 2, year 3, moving forward.
Because I would continue to support putting the Sweeney cafetorium in that capital line, in that capital improvement now, but maybe put it out to be something that we look at doing in 4 or 5 years, which would be on the capital, actually put it on the map, but still, if we choose not to do it because the expansion didn't go through, or it won't affect it, or we could take it off. But that's a project that's been kicked around for 20, 30 years, probably as long as we've had a cafetorium there. So I would encourage you to put that back on there, maybe put it out over 4 years.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions about the budget? Is there any other information that board members want to explain the budget? Obviously, I can have it available for the next workshop.
Well, you know, I see that there's no heating or, you know, upgrades at Natchog.
I'm not aware of heating issues at Natchog, so that's why it's not
Okay.
on the list. They would, the security updates, the security audit, they would be a part of that. It's all schools.
I just want to say that I appreciate this budget book. It's very thorough, concise. Great job to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you,
Tracy.
Ilda. Appreciate it. Any other questions or information that the board needs for the budget? Wow, that was the easiest budget presentation ever. Everyone's numb by the previous presentations or discussions, right? All right.
No, it was the clearest budget book I've ever read. I actually read cover to cover.
That's great to know, because that's ultimately our goal, is to make it make sense to everyone that picks it up.
Yes, I echo all that, and thank you very much, because except for the last couple of years, nothing was this clear. So thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Do you want me just to move on to the mid-year check-in?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a lot of information. I'm going to just try to do a summary of that information and then provide the board members with this PowerPoint and any other information you might ask, because there is a lot. I mean, it's a mid-year check-in on the district's progress. It's a lot of information, and I know, you know, it's 10 of 9 at this point. All right, so obviously we're going to do a quick review of the superintendent's evaluation and the Board of Education self-evaluation. And the reason why we do that now when we do the mid-year check-in is because the district's goals are tied to my performance. It's sort of a trickle-down effect. We set district goals that I'm responsible for, and all of from there comes the school goals and the staff members' goals and the student goals, and they should all be linear and aligned. So I am ultimately responsible for everything that happens or doesn't happen in the district. So we'll quickly review that. I will talk to you about some of the things that we're still doing well, despite this year being a very challenging one as a result of COVID. And again, you're welcome to ask for additional evidence on any of the things that we bring up. So first of all, back in July, the board was provided with an overview of strategic priorities and targets. They were presented again in more detail at the board retreat in September. And then I provided some sample department and school improvement plans in October. So we've sort of been, you've been introduced to these goals and targets for several months now. During the summertime, prior to the board retreat, the Board of Ed filled out its own self-evaluation. Every member at the board at the time did their own self-assessment and brought the information to the board retreat. All the responses were gathered together and analyzed. We discussed celebrations of strengths, the things that the board and you know, we did together well. We discussed action plans to address the things that we could do better. And the shared reading and the CABE materials for board members is part of our plan to improve our performance together. So we're a team, which is what our shared reading talks about, working together as a team. This mid-year check-in is an opportunity for me to show you the goals that we've been able to focus on. I will continue to say that this has been probably the most challenging of years as a result of COVID. And I think part of it is because we were told that the year wouldn't be challenging at all. COVID was not going to be an issue this year. This was the year we were going to build back and respond to what happened before, and it didn't play out like that at all. Our biggest obstacles continue to be unfilled positions and attendance, which we'll talk a little bit about in the next couple slides. The Personnel Committee, and Paul is the chair of that committee, is going to assume the oversight of the superintendent's evaluation moving forward. And again, I want to celebrate the board for taking this on, because as we've talked about, there wasn't a formal evaluation done before. So it's the way it's supposed to be and needs to continue to be. So that's a good thing. The Board of Ed, the entire Board of Ed has an opportunity to weigh in on my evaluation in an executive session that will take place before the end of this fiscal year. And the board self-assessment will continue to be completed at the board retreat in 2022. We're right now, the board, the superintendent's evaluation is sort of a combination of two evaluations from CABE and from the NELP standards. And you'll see from the chart on the screen, it's really the same kinds of things both standards are addressing. We have a little combo going on, but it's all the same work that we're doing. So everything that you'll be asked to do in terms of my evaluation will tie back to these major categories. All right, one of the things that I asked Mr. Weathers to do for us is to try to quantify some of the issues we're having with attendance. So this little visual, the blue part of the pie chart is student absences. This is the top quartile of student absences in the district. So the kids that have 18 days that they've missed school. The orange part of the pie chart is classroom teacher absences. And in this case, the average classroom teacher has missed 5 days of school. And what we're trying to say here is if the students missed 18 days of school, and if the 5 days the teachers missed on average happened at different times, that you're talking about 22 school days could potentially be missed for these kiddos. And we have examples across the district of large numbers of instructional days being missed by students and staff because COVID's impact this year has been tremendous. So there are a lot of places where we have not hit our targets, and it's because we are missing, truly missing months of the school year at this point for many of our kiddos. So we're going to talk more about this and the district's response moving forward. But I appreciate Mr. Weathers trying to quantify this for us to show us that it's a big deal, the number of days our students and staff are missing.
Yeah, just so if I could jump in, Tracy, if it's okay. 800 of our students, like over 800 of our students are chronically absent for the year, and we're not in March yet. And just to put a weight of how significant that is, because, right, so we're looking at ways to quantify this, like Tracy said, and communicate it with everybody, and we're digging at it and looking at it, but we'll share more on it, but that's really significant.
Mr. Weathers, please repeat that number. I didn't hear you correctly.
So about over 800 of our students in the district have already missed 18 days, which will make them chronically absent for the entire year before we hit March 1st, which is it is staggering.
So with about 3,200 kids in the district, give or take, we're talking about 25% of our kids. Yeah. It's an incredibly high number at this point in the game. It's depressing.
Could we ask questions through the presentation?
Sure.
Okay, so of those 800, do we know how many were in isolation or had COVID, or was, the reasons why they were absent?
We don't off the top of our heads, but we probably could do a little digging in to figure it out.
Thank you.
We know the data is available to us. It might be a little bit of an archaeological dig, but we can figure it out. All right. For those of you familiar with the benchmarking system, we test our students 3 times a year to obviously to show where they are, where they're performing in reading and math, and whether or not they're moving toward our targets. We use iReady in kindergarten through 8th grade. So this is just a quick little, actually, this is the iReady charts. Our goal this year was to try to get us back to the 2018-19 achievement levels. 2018-19 was the last school year that had no impact of COVID. So our goal was to try to get us at least back to that point, if possible to exceed that point, because, the district is always moving to improve performance. So this little chart up here is all of our schools listed. The green means the students have met benchmark, yellow means they're approaching benchmark, red means that they're in need of improvement. Obviously, we want to see more kids in green and closer to green on the yellow side, right? So we want to move all of our kids toward green. That's the ultimate goal. So this is the 2018-19 data, and it's big picture data. Like we could give you data based on each grade level. We could break out every school by grade level. We can do all that. This is just globally, all of the kiddos together, looking big picture. So you can see we put together the percent of students meeting benchmark and those approaching benchmark, and have come up with some percentages from 2018-19. So then we moved to 21-22, our current year that we're in right now. So you can see, for example, Barrows is at 75% meeting or approaching benchmark as compared to 84% back in 18-19. 63% at Natchog as compared to 82%. So you can see a significant drop in our achievement levels when we're comparing, you know, it's not the same kids, but it's the same assessment given at the same times a year in the same manner. So you can see a drop. The only school that did not drop is the middle school, whose performance happens to be the lowest of all of our schools at this point. So you can see that the district has experienced a breakdown or a decrease in achievement, which we know has a lot to do with COVID, missing school, missing instructional time. You know, last year we had learning models, so we were either in person, virtual, or fully remote. This year we don't have those options, but we have a ton of instructional days that are missed by students and staff as a result of COVID. So we definitely have an impact on the district. That's our reading data. Then we've done the same thing for you in terms of math. You can see where we were in 2018-19. And then you can see where we are now in 21-22. Same thing. In this case, every one of our schools has a decreased performance levels when we compare the 2 years, kindergarten through 8th grade, on all schools. So we're very much aware that our achievement has dropped lower than we're comfortable with. We do have to figure out how to balance out this attendance issue, because we can make, you know, amazing strides in how we're going to address our achievement issues, but if the students and staff aren't in their seats, in their classrooms, there's not a lot you can do. So we really do have to focus some energy on trying to improve attendance before we're going to be able to make adjustments to the achievement levels. Any questions so far? All right, PSAT data, same thing. We try to compare 2018-19 back to this year. It's strange. You'll see from our PSAT data, in some cases, it's very similar, and in some cases, we have a slight decrease in performance. But again, this is the 9th graders in 2018-19 taking the PSAT 8-9, and then the 9th graders this year taking the PSATs 8 and 9. So you can see there's, okay, we have the Wyndham High School by year, and then the state of Connecticut by year. So you can see that they're actually, in this case, Neil, this is one of the places where the 9th grade actually did better this year on the PSAT 8-9 than they did in 18-19. We're not really sure why, but we're happy about it. We actually have to figure out why, because if you don't know why, you can't replicate it. And that's our goal, right? Is to always be improving performance. So.
Yeah, one factor is, I know that in the last couple of years, well, maybe not so during COVID, we've worked on in the past, some of the PSAT tests that were given was it's given in one day. And sometimes the sample size of the percentage of students that participated wasn't always, 80-90% of the student body. And in recent years, that has been closer to being the case.
That's the high school team working hard to get those kids
to make sure they come in and test.
Absolutely.
Right.
Go Whippets. All right, this is the 10th grade, same data compared to 2018-19. And this year, slight decrease. And the state decreased too. So it's not just our kiddos, it's across the board. And the same thing holds true in the 11th grade. Actually, this is another example where the 11th grade went up, and perhaps it's an increased participation rate, I'm not sure. But the state went down and we went up, which we really like when that happens. We'd like to replicate that over and over again. Any PSAT questions? All right, so now I'm going to just give you a quick rundown on where we are with the strategic priorities and district initiatives. Again, I expect you to ask me for follow-up evidence and to have questions, because it's a lot of information. Priority number 1 is student learning. Project-based learning has been our big instructional initiative. Every single student pre-K to 12 has had a fall project-based learning experience, and we'll have a spring one coming soon. Acceleration versus remediation has been somewhat impacted by staffing and excessive absences due to COVID, but I can tell you that all of our schools are still running their intervention groups, their win blocks, and we do have a plan to start to address this. What can't be addressed during the school year will be addressed in the summer of 2022. where we're going to offer another expanded summer school and try to see if we can get some more kids on track. K-8, we have 2 new math programs, or I shouldn't say programs, I should say resources to support our curriculum. We have been offering PD opportunities throughout the year, including today. And we have a plan to adjust some of our curriculum maps and do some map revisions in the summer. We'll be convening groups of teachers together to do that work. The middle school has implemented the American Reading Company, ARC resources. When you bring ARC on as your reading program, their professional development package is actually really impressive. Every school gets at least 10 days of job embedded PD. So they actually sort of move into the middle school for those 10 days and they're spaced out throughout the year, and they watch the teachers actually deliver instruction and provide on the job in the moment feedback, which is really powerful stuff. So that's happening at the middle school. And we have a continued focus on the SAT, and we plan to administer the PSAT to our 8th graders in the spring so that we're able to show a trajectory between 8th grade and 11th grade in hopes of improving those SAT scores. Any questions on student learning? I know there's so much information and it's so late. Staff learning, again, project-based learning is a learning target for our staff, for our teachers, because it's a target for our students. So we offer, there's a 3-day training or a 1-day slice. We have sent teachers to both. Non-certified staff have had the 1-day slice, and some teachers that are not directly planning out lessons for PBL have gone to the 1-day slice. Training attendance for the training has been impacted by COVID. And obviously, in order for you to send a teacher to a 3-day training, you need a substitute. And that has not always been the case. So we've had to cancel some of our training options as a result of COVID. The Center for School Change PD, of course, they changed their name to the Partners for Educational Leadership, is being offered to our leadership team. We did a session in the fall. We just did one a week or so ago, and we'll have another in the spring. The PD consists of walkthroughs and professional development sessions. Obviously, there's PD for our math programs. If we expect the students to use a new program, the teachers have to understand how to use that program. The same is true for American Reading Company. Proud to say that the UConn Teacher Leader Fellows is still in effect. I have to be perfectly honest, I don't know if this is the second or third full cohort. But this particular cohort started meeting in September of 2021 and has a monthly session together with Maureen Lantner through May of 2022. These are our teacher leaders. They have a number of leadership projects that they will implement in their own schools and take on more leadership roles in their buildings. Recruitment and retention continues to be a focus of ours, and a draft plan from HR was shared with the Personnel Committee on February 14th, so that will soon make its way to the board. Any questions on staff learning or staff capacity? All right, priority number, oh, I heard somebody.
Yes, can I add that I saw on our emails also an initiative with Eastern Connecticut State University Education Department that is being offered to all the teachers in the district. So anyways.
Are you referring to the tuition reimbursement piece?
Sorry, my dogs are barking. I think not sure about that. I'm talking about the different options they have to continue education also.
Go ahead, Beth. I see your hand raised.
That was a message that we sent out today about a reminder for the, this is work that's not necessarily in the presentation that the committee saw last week, right, on our recruitment retention strategies for Stephanie's, but this is the additional work I've been doing in collaboration with Eastern and Southern universities to get our teachers more information about their educator prep programs, as well as non-certified staff who might be interested. And so we've been running information sessions. So that reminder just went out again today.
Got it. Thank you. All right. So in terms of partners as resources, we have increased the number of opportunities our high school students have to have mentors and internship opportunities. We have the fire department focused on the EMT course. We now offer a CNA course and certification in our high school. They have their cooperative work experience course and internships, and we added Downs construction shadowing opportunities. So kudos to the high school team for really making sure that they rely on the community and that the community will eventually be able to rely on our kiddos. So we're really happy about that. We've also, at the high school level, expanded our connections with Eastern and QVCC. They've increased enrollment in both those colleges. I had lunch a week or two ago with the students that attend Eastern right now, and they're taking Education 357. And of the 6 kids I had for lunch, 4 of them actually aspire to work in the education field. A couple of them want to be preschool teachers, and a couple of them want to consider being school counselors. So we're trying to potentially connect this cohort and stay with them, because they could be our next employees, 4 or 5 years down the road. So we've also continued our partnership with UConn ECE courses. So I feel like the high school's in a really good place in terms of what we're offering our students. No matter what they want to do when they leave us, they have some opportunities available to them. We did not issue a climate and satisfaction survey. I put together a committee, but we didn't launch the survey, mostly because I expected that the results would not be very positive, because we had major issues with COVID, kind of low morale. And I wasn't certain that we were going to get a true baseline. We do have to push out the survey, so I have to find a time when that's going to be appropriate. I want a baseline that makes sense for us so that we can improve on our performance. And that's climate surveys for staff. It's also going to be for families as well. So those will be pushed out at some point. There is a committee already involved. In terms of welcoming schools and family engagement, all of our schools have a family liaison. We have a small leadership team working with the Center for Public Research and Leadership, or CPEARL as they refer to themselves. Their focus is family engagement and parental partnerships. We continue to emphasize accessible messaging and communication. And hiring, qualified bilingual staff, because we know we absolutely have to make sure we include every one of our families in our messages. And parent reps will be invited to attend the strategic planning sessions in the summer of 2022. So that's our plan moving forward on partners as resources. Any questions? All right, priority 4, learning environment. We've continued our focus on social emotional learning, ruler and responsive classroom training, and the implementation of DESA, which is an assessment that allows us to figure out how our kids are feeling so that we can potentially intervene if something, if they're not feeling as well as we'd like them to be, or if they're not comfortable with what's going on. All of this is part of the Project Aware grant. That I believe is in year 3 of 5 years, or it's possibly 4. I have to verify that. But we're seeing our schools take it a step further. And in addition to sending their teachers to classrooms, responsive classroom and ruler training, they're also offering social emotional days or activities within their schools. So we're seeing that definitely is being embraced by the school system. We have a classroom focus on project-based learning. We've talked about our focus on PBL and how that plays out in terms of our teachers and our students. We have not jumped into this whole idea of formally training staff in the inquiry model. Our Barrow staff is trained, and we do have a plan to eventually help them get the rest of the district trained, but we haven't taken on that next step just yet. Obviously, you need to have student-to-student discourse and collaboration skills in place in your classrooms to make things like project-based learning happen. We also have not addressed this bottom bullet, moving our classroom environment checklist to include equity, and the portrait of the graduate success indicators has not been tackled this year. We hope to address it this summer and early next fall, but it was just one more thing that, I don't think that a lot of people realize that every little thing that comes out from the state related to COVID is there's another series of work that needs to be done that has absolutely nothing to do with the actual work that needs to be done. So every time there's something, even as simple as pushing out, you need to come pick up your new masks and your test kits, it requires a huge amount of coordination to make those things happen. So COVID has taken up a large amount of our time, and I'm going to look forward to the day when we're not dealing with it anymore so that we can focus on these kinds of things. Any questions on learning environment? Priority 5 is effective operations. We continue to focus on streamlined protocols, cross-training, automated options, and shared practices. You will soon see a district dashboard. We have several areas that we're able to show you. And we're going to soon be able to put together an individual student dashboard. We hope to have it out by the fall of 2022. I have presented to both the Elementary Consolidation Committee and the Board of Ed my proposal for the elementary consolidation, and we have updated the facilities master plan. So follow-up is definitely necessary on those presentations and with the board eventually needing to make a decision on that. We have 2 needs assessments currently underway. That's for pupil services, our special ed department, and literacy. We are waiting on math, and we still have to share with the board the actual data that was provided to us from the ESOL bilingual program. That needs assessment was done last spring, and it still needs to be presented with an action plan. So more to come on that as well. Any questions on effective operations? Just one more. Diversity as strength is our last priority. We have expanded our dual language opportunities. For example, Dos Rios is offered in kindergarten through 5th grade at Natchog. Oop, I just found a spelling error right there. Left off the A in Natchog. I can tell you that the Black and Latino Studies class at Wyndham High School currently has 68 students enrolled this year, and there's already 150 registered for next school year, so we're really proud of that. The District Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan, the committee is going to be reconvened this spring, and there will need to be a plan written, either 1 to 3 year plan, depending on how well the committee works together. But we definitely have continued focus on hiring and retaining qualified and diverse teaching staff. And the school teams have their own focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I know that Beth will play a role in helping us reconvene this committee and getting this plan rolled out soon. Recruitment and retention and grow your own programs. Obviously, we're always looking to retain our teachers. We've increased our tuition reimbursement options for shortage areas. We are exploring whether we can offer sign-on bonuses like some other districts have been offering. Like I said earlier, I've begun to meet with Wyndham High School students interested in the field of education. We're looking for any and every way possible to potentially grow our own employees to help the district. It's back at that whole idea of sustainability. And other data that we're tracking is the physical fitness scores, which are part of our accountability index. Again, we're looking to get back to 2018-19. We're obviously talking about chronic absenteeism, and the graduation rate was provided to the district, and there's some back and forth that happens between the district and the state. Once that's been ironed out, we will release that information to the board in the very near future. And that is all I have for the mid-year check-in. And again, I expect there to be requests for additional information, or there to be lots of questions. Probably not a lot at 9:15 on a Wednesday night, but they might be coming in. I'm okay with that.
Yes, and you were going to send this to board members, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so are there some, Mark Doyle?
Yep.
you have a
Yeah.
question?
Right. I don't expect an answer tonight, Tracy, and I'm not, it may not be exactly on target, but I'm really concerned when I look at those middle school numbers. It's kind of like a black hole opens up there. The kids are doing all right in the grade school levels, and then they hit the middle school, and it's just a tremendous drop. And it's been an ongoing issue with the middle school of the kids falling off. Is it time to bring in some outside group to do an analysis of what we're doing there, or do we need to look at the curriculum? I mean, we don't seem to be able to make a dent at that middle school level. Matter of fact, as I say, we seem to lose kids at that middle school. I'm really concerned about that.
Thank you for.
I was just going to say thank you, Mark. I have some of my own theories about that middle school in general. When you look at the state standards, it becomes more difficult for the students to move forward if they're not at grade level or close to grade level in those grades. The gap definitely widens, and they have less support at the middle school in terms of, elementary classrooms are set up very different than middle school classrooms, and expectations are different. But we are playing out a few things to see if we can figure out why the achievement level is so much lower there. And we do actually have a walkthrough planned with the state. Iris White, who runs the Commissioners Network and is basically at the high school at least once a month, sometimes more than once a month. She's actually going to be doing a walkthrough at the middle school level. And we're trying to see if we could potentially benefit from having some help figure out what's going on. So it's definitely on our radar. It's you can't ignore it when you see
Yeah,
it.
you can't. No, it's like I say, they're going backwards. It's not that they're not keeping it up. They're losing ground there. So I'm just very concerned. It's been an ongoing issue, I know, but maybe we need to put more paras in the classroom, or I don't know all the answers either, but I appreciate the fact that we're going to be looking hard at it. Thank you.
I was gonna say thank you for that, all that. And I'm wondering if other school districts have a similar experience with their middle school age group, their developmental stage in which they are at, and what do we need to be more supportive to that group based on their physical and emotional needs as well as educational.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, when I send the PowerPoint to board members, you can ask that way as well.
And if there are no further questions, we would move to public comment. You can put your name in the chat or raise your hand. Okay, I see Christina and Krista Kettle. Would you like to make your comment? Are you having trouble connecting?
No, I'm just trying to get it so I can kind of do my little speech.
Go ahead, just do it without the video.
Hello, my name is Chris Kettle, and I am in 7th grade at the Charles H. Brown STEM Academy. I wanted to attend this meeting today because I wanted to know my opinion about masks. I feel that we should be wearing masks. You may say that masks help stop coronavirus, but honestly it doesn't. It doesn't have the ability to stop it. Wearing a mask causes minor discomfort and has a long-term effect on mental health. Since the outbreak, I've noticed my friends have gotten more depressed and would not talk to me as much as they used to. This affected my social ability and made me feel alone. My youngest brother, who also attends Charles H. Barrow STEM Academy, has asthma and is affected because he has a really difficult time breathing. And he had to start taking medicine that he hadn't taken in over 2 years. I don't have any breathing issues, but I have a really hard time breathing when I do wear a mask. Now that you know my feelings, I hope you reconsider this when you make a decision. That should be a personal choice to make.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment?
I see someone's name in the chat.
It looks like Sherry D'Alessandro.
Yes, let me just turn my camera on here. Okay. Hi, I wasn't quite sure. I wanted to make a comment earlier, and but I do want to thank the board and those members that voted to extend the mask mandate.
because I do have some questions about how things will roll out when, and I know eventually we will be not wearing masks anymore. But I guess my comments are geared towards the discussion for March 9th. When we do release the mask mandate, how will that and what impact will that have on the other social distance protocols? Will students still remain in their cohorts? Will they, for example, will they be distant, still sit distant? Will they still stay in their cohorts during lunchtime? And or once the mask mandate is lifted, will there be no more social distancing in the school at all? And then the other comment I was interested in knowing about was, and I appreciated being able to participate in the survey. And I especially like that we included the students, but I was curious as to how the ratio played out as far as how many students voted to remove the mask mandate and how many were in favor of it. I'd be curious to know, and obviously we've just heard from Krista, so there's obviously a lot of students who do want to have the mask mandate lifted. But I'm just kind of curious as to how that weighs out, because I think our students come at it from a different perspective, and parents and staff. I'd be curious to know how many staff there are, how many staff who are in favor of lifting the mask mandate and how many want to keep it. You know, I'm concerned that does the staff feel safe? So those are things that I'd like just to consider for the March 9th discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure that we will be considering the public comments that we hear. I believe Joanne Haddad has put her name in the chat.
Hi, good evening. I did, and you know, I'm a community member as well as an administrator at the middle school. I did want to throw in, you know, there were a few comments earlier that I wanted to hopefully set people at ease when talking about whether, when it's optional, are children going to make fun of or pick on other children? I think I even heard the bullying out there, bullying word, which is a word I do want you to know that we don't take lightly, and we try not to throw that around because it has a very definite definition to it. So it's really important to, we'll keep the bullying piece out because, well, that's another whole discussion. However, I did want to just say that, you know, the kids are really probably more than what is perceived out there, kind to one another when it comes to masks. And in fact, when we have a lot of kids that will tell other students if they're wearing it below their nose to put it up, not in a mean way, not in a mean-spirited way, but just a, hey, keep the mask up, keep the mask up. So I really do believe, I really, really firmly believe that if and when it becomes optional, those that feel comfortable in it will wear it, and those that are not going to say anything to those that are. I really don't. So I think that's important. And I know the Miss D'Alessandro, who was just asking questions about what's going on, I can speak for the middle school. I can tell you that we still cohort. Our students stay in a group together. They travel from class to class together. And in the cafeteria, we're still cohorting. They're in assigned seats. We know who's where. We are escorted from place to place in the building. We try and maintain all of the mitigating strategies, whether we're wearing masks or not. I don't see those going anywhere. Quite honestly, there are a few positives that happened through the pandemic. I know that kind of it's awkward to say. And those are the ones that I hope we maintain anyway in our school district. And I think we will. So I just want to put parents' minds at ease in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments?
Mary, I saw that Christina Kettle, the mother, raised her hand. I don't know if you
Okay, I
noticed.
just saw that too. So yes, please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I have 3 children, or excuse me, my name is Christina Kettle, and I have 3 children that attend the STEM Academy. My youngest of those three is a second grader, and normal for him has been mask wearing. In the beginning, everyone was scared, didn't know what was going on, and I was all for wearing the masks. At this point, the masks has affected his learning greatly. He has trouble reading. He has trouble reading facial cues. And since he's unable to view a lot of those facial cues, it's called behavior issues, which in turn affects his learning as well as his peers, causes undue stress to his teacher, as well as myself and my family. Not to mention, this has increased his asthma, which was under control until the masking began. Since then, he has had to take emergency steroids to keep his breathing regulated. This too has an effect on his body. He has so much extra energy, little outlet, again, creating a behavior problem. I hope sharing some struggles in our family makes you think about the effects masks have on others within the community. My request is that you drop the mask or allow the right to choose what each person is comfortable with. How many students and staff have contracted COVID while wearing masks at school? Masks can't stop the virus completely, and it's time to allow our students to see who their teachers are and recognize them both at school and in the community and be able to see smiling faces again. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So I'm just checking chat. Ellie Garvey.
Hi, Ellie Garvey here. I just wanted to voice my opinion that I feel like it should be a choice for families to decide. We're at a great point where even the numbers that tell us that by the votes, it's pretty split. So let's end the masks when they want to, and the other ones that feel like they should have the right as well. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I don't see anyone else raising their hand. So that's the next motion is.
I move, we move.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. So at 9:27, thank you very much for your perseverance. And we will adjourn.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Barry.
Good night.
Everybody.
Good job, Mary.